And we're back on the Fowler Show. It's time for your political maniacs. President Trump made it clear to Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke that he was pissed off by his decision to exempt Florida from the expanded offshore drilling plan. Zinke went rogue, not coordinating with the White House or anyone else, before unilaterally deciding to exempt Florida from Trump's plan to expand offshore drilling nationwide. Sources say that Zinke caved to pressure from Florida Governor Rick Scott, who objected to the ideal of drilling off the coast of Florida, as any sensible Florida governor would. So here we are with Ryan Zinke acting up again. Remember at the beginning of the Trump administration, we called these guys the swamp cabinet? This here is a definition of the swamp. So Zinke, who takes private jets and who, you know, pals around with Whitefish, who got this sort of no-bid contract to fix Puerto Ricans' power, even though they only had 2 employees, now is dabbling in offshore drilling. And I mean, that is disheartening that we actually are dealing with, like, drilling off our coast. And our coast is, for a lot of coastline states, that's where the money, that's a moneymaker. For the state of Florida, and I'm from Florida, like, that's a moneymaker. Like, just imagine like oil rigs off South Beach. Like, you're at South Beach drinking a Mai Tai and you look up and there goes the Deepwater Horizon just sitting out there. And let's not forget the story of the Deepwater Horizon and the ideal that when you loosen up all of these regulations, right, on these oil rigs, and you start firing regulators and you start just saying it's fast and loose out here in the ocean, you have something what we call oil leaks. And these oil leaks can be devastating. Here's what Al Gore had to say about the drilling on Twitter. President Trump is once again defying a majority of American citizens, states, and businesses. His offshore drilling proposal threatens our coastal communities just to prop up a dying fossil fuel industry. And the former vice president and environmental activist is correct. What Donald Trump is doing here is making sure that his rich millionaire and billionaire oil tycoon buddies are taken care of before he leaves the White House. So by giving them as much land and as much waterway, as much of America's pristine coastline as possible to drill on, he's fulfilling his campaign promises to all the millionaire and billionaire fossil fuel industry executives who know that their industry is dying a quick and fast death. But back to Ryan Zinke, because I don't want to get away from Ryan Zinke and his lunacy. So let's break this all down. So Ryan Zinke, he was the at-large senator from the state of Montana. He is the Interior Secretary, and he's been a wild boy. I mean, he has this whole flag thing when he's at work and not at work, very similar to the Queen of England. When she's in Buckingham Palace, they raise the flag. When Zinke's at the Interior, they raise the flag. He showed up to work on a horse the first day. He's involved in sort of this quasi-private plane scandal, similar to former HHS Secretary Tom Price. And now we see him palling around one of the most unpopular governors in American history, Rick Scott. Now, why Rick Scott, right? So here's why. Rick Scott is considering a Senate run against the incumbent Democratic senator from the state of Florida, Bill Nelson. So what better way to shore up your pathway to becoming senator from the next state of Florida than to pal it around with your buddy Ryan Zinke and saying, hey, listen, let's drill everywhere else on the coastline, just not in my state. And Zinke's saying, that sounds like a good idea. So Zinke gets a pencil eraser, maybe some whiteout, maybe the delete button, and he goes through the offshore drilling plan all by himself, and he just erases Florida. And then doesn't tell anybody. No, I take that back. He tweeted it. Florida's out. All you other states, good riddance and Godspeed. And so people at the White House are saying, what? When did Florida go out? This all happened quickly. This all started on January 4th, right? They released the 5-year proposal, which kicked off the 60-day comment. There's a 60-day comment period in which the proposal is supposed to stay the same. And then the American people have 60 days to comment. But in the comment period, Florida just went missing. Here's what Press Secretary of the White House, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, had to say about it in exchange with reporters.
Rick Scott, the governor of Florida, is expressing concerns about the administration's new offshore oil drilling plan, which would allow, obviously, drilling on most coastal waters. Can the president afford to cross this important political ally, and what do you plan to say to Governor Scott about the whole plan?
Our goal certainly isn't to cross Governor Scott. We have a great relationship with him. We're going to continue working with him on a number of issues. Just because we may differ on issues from time to time doesn't mean that we can't still have an incredibly strong and good relationship.
Now, as you can imagine, after that exchange, every other governor who had a coastline was like, wait a minute, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So every governor who had a coastline was like, wait a minute, can we be exempt? Can we get the pencil eraser treatment too? So the governors of New Hampshire, Washington, New York, California, just to name a few, all lined up at the White House saying, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. So you're allowing them to drill at my state, but not his state? Oh, hell no. Add my state to that list. And that's when things started to get a little dicey. And President Trump, as he does, instead of standing by your man, threw his man under the bus. Zinke's initial proposal expanded offshore drilling both in the nation's coastlines as the first step in the process of crafting a plan for lease sales. After gathering public comment on the proposal, the Interior will craft another proposal before finalizing the areas that will be available for drilling. And so basically, Zinke's over here tinkering for his buddy Rick Scott so he could set up a Senate race, a Senate run, and here we are, America. Here's the truth. How about we talk about the truth? The truth of the matter is this. Oil drilling is bad because it literally, one, it's bad for our environment, but two, you can literally destroy, you are literally playing Russian roulette with tourism industries, with fishing industries, with all these industries that make a lot of these coastal states tick. Think about Florida, for example. Florida would be nothing without its beaches. And so the idea that you can have an oil rig 25 miles off the coast of South Beach, or off the coast of Daytona Beach, or off the coast of Jacksonville, or off the coast of Tampa, or off the coast of Sanibel Island, or off the coast of the Keys, is problematic for a lot of reasons. Number one, you have the possibility of an oil leak or an oil spill similar to Deepwater Horizon. Number two, you have the possibility of number two, you have all the ships passing. Any of these tanker ships that are picking up this oil could get in an accident, they could crash, that could destroy, that could get into the water, that could literally destroy the biodiversity of some of these regions. And God forbid that this oil gets into the Everglades, which is an ecosystem that was once endangered and is finally now flourishing. This is a real crisis. And the fact that Donald Trump thinks it's okay, and Ryan Zinke thinks it's okay, to open up our coastal areas to these old school fossil fuel industry companies is outright ridiculous. And the proof is in the pudding. Don't take my word for it. Ask the people of the Nigerian Delta how oil drilling affected their ecosystem and their economy.